to answer the questions I was getting, my internet. I think the cable I was using to connect to my PC went. So I had to take the cable I was normally use to connect my Xbox up to the router to my PC for it to be read. So I'm gonna have to get another Ethernet cable down the road whenever I'm able to connect my reset up my Xbox and so forth. But the process is working. All right. So take two, and yes, Charlie, that's dedication. I said I was finishing this. I'm going to. I'm going to finish this tonight. All right. But that's what happened. So it wasn't a power outage. It's the router just went, and the router itself was showing that it was reading the internet, but for some reason my PC wasn't. So it ended up being, I'm guessing, the Ethernet cable I was using to connect to my PC because nothing else was working. But right now it is. So I'm going. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to get 2 new Ethernet cables if I can find them cheap enough on Amazon. Just because I've had these for as long as I can remember. So probably just getting 2 just 2 new ones basically. Anyway, but okay, I'm gonna start where Sam says it's a trap. All right, I can't remember where exactly I stopped, but I'm gonna start there. It's about there, around there that it conked out on me. But like I said, take 2, get 2, or take 2. Yeah, foot cam got disconnected. Anyway, but thank you for sticking around. Thank you for popping back in. Let's do this. All right. Oh, you should have heard me cursing up a storm. I think sailors would blush. Anyway. It's a trap, said Sam, and he laid his hand upon the hilt of his sword, and as he did so, he thought of the darkness of the barrow whence it came. I wish old Tom was near us now, he thought. Then, as he stood darkness about him and a blackness of despair and anger in his heart, it seemed to him that he saw a light in his mind, almost unbearably bright at first, as the sun ray to the eyes of one long hidden in a windowless pit. Then the light became color. Green, gold, silver, white. Far off, as in a little picture drawn by elven fingers, he saw that Lady Galadriel standing on the grass in Lorien, and gifts were in her hands. And you, ring-bearer, he heard her say, remote but clear, for you I have prepared this. The bubbling hiss drew nearer, and there was a creaking as of some great jointed thing that moved with slow purpose in the dark. A reek came on before it. Master, master, cried Sam, and life and urgency came back into his voice. The lady's gift! The star glass, a light to you in dark places, she said it was to be. The star glass! The star glass, muttered Frodo, as one answering out of sleep, hardly comprehending. Why, yes, why had I forgotten it? A light when all other lights go a light when all other lights go out. And now indeed light alone can help us. Slowly his hand went to his bosom, and slowly he held aloft the phial of Galadriel. For a moment it glimmered, faint as a rising star struggling in heavy earthward mist. And then as its power waxed and hope grew in Frodo's mind, it began to burn, and kindled to a silver flame, a minute heart of dazzling light, as though Arendelle himself come down from the high sunset paths with the last cimmeral upon his brow. The darkness receded from it, until it seemed to shine in the center of a globe of airy crystal, and the hand that held it sparkled with white fire. Frodo gazed in wonder at this marvelous gift that he had so long carried, not guessing its full worth and potency. Seldom had he remembered it on the road, until they came to Morgul Vale, and never had he used it for fear of its revealing light. Aya, Elrondil, Elanonian, and Kalima, he cried, and knew not what he had spoken, for it seemed that another voice spoke through his, clear, untroubled by the foul air of the pits. But other potencies there are in Middle-earth, powers of night, and they are old and strong. And she that walked in the darkness had heard that elves cry far back in the deeps of time. And she had not heeded it, and it did not daunt her now. Even as Frodo spoke, he felt a great malice bent upon him, and a deadly regard considering him. Not far down the tunnel, between them and the opening, where they had reeled and stumbled, he was aware of eyes growing visible. 2 great clusters of many-windowed eyes. The coming menace was unmasked at last. The radiance of the star glass was broken and thrown back from their 1,000 facets Behind the glitter, a pale, deadly fire began steadily to glow within. A flame kindled in some deep pit of evil thoughts. Monstrous and abominable eyes they were, bestial and yet filled with purpose and with hideous delight, gloating over their prey trapped beyond all hope of escape. Frodo and Sam, horror-stricken, began slowly to back away, their own gaze held by the dreadful stare of those baleful eyes. But as they backed, so the eyes advanced. Frodo's hand wavered, and slowly the file dropped. Then suddenly, released from the holding spell to run a little while in vain panic, for the amusement of the eyes, they both turned and fled together. But even as they ran, Frodo looked back and saw with terror that at once the eyes came leaping up behind. The stench of death was like a cloud about him. "Stand! Stand!" he cried desperately. "Running is no use." Slowly the eyes crept nearer. "Gladriel," he called, and gathering his courage, he lifted up the file once more. The eyes halted. For a moment their regard relaxed, as if some hint of doubt troubled them. Then Frodo's heart flamed within him, and without thinking what he did, whether it was folly or despair or courage, he took the file in his left hand and with his right hand drew his sword. Sting flashed out, and the sharp elven blade sparkled in the silver light. But at its edges a blue fire flickered. Then holding the star aloft and the bright sword advanced, Frodo, Hobbit of the Shire, walked steadily down to meet the eyes. Welcome everyone, thank you all for sticking with me while I got my internet working. They wavered. Doubt came into them as the light approached. One by one they dimmed, and slowly they drew back. No brightness so deadly had ever afflicted them before. From sun and moon and star they had been safe underground, but now a star had descended into the very earth. Still it approached, and the eyes began to quail. One by one they all went dark. They turned away, and a great bulk, beyond the light's reach, heaved its huge shadow in between. They were gone. "Master, master," cried Sam. He was close behind, his own sword drawn and ready. "Stars and glory, but the elves would make a song of that, if ever they heard of it. And may I live to tell them and hear them sing. But don't go on, master, don't go down to that den. Now's our only chance. Now let's get out of this foul hole." And so back they turned once more, first walking and then running, for as they went the floor of the tunnel rose steeply, and with every stride they climbed higher above the stenches of the unseen lair, and strength returned to limb and heart. But still the hatred of the Watcher lurked behind them, blind for a while, perhaps, but undefeated, still bent on death. And now there came a flow of air to meet them, cold and thin, the opening the tunnel's end, and last it was before them. Panting, yearning for a roofless place, they flung themselves forward, and then in amazement they staggered, tumbling back. The outlet was blocked with some barrier, but not of stone. Soft and a little yielding it seemed, and yet strong and impervious. Air filtered through, but not a glimmer of any light. Once more they charged and were hurled back. Holding aloft the file, Frodo looked, and before him he saw a grayness with the radiance of the star glass did not pierce and did not illuminate, as if it were a shadow that being cast by no light could dissipate. Across the width and height of the tunnel, a vast web was spun, orderly as the web of some huge spider, but denser, woven, and far greater, and each thread was as thick as a rope. Sam laughed grimly. "Cobwebs," he said. "Is that all? Cobwebs! But what a spider! Have at him! Down with him!" In a fury, he hewed at them with his sword, but the thread that he struck did not break. It gave a little, and then sprang back like a plucked bowstring, turning the blade and tossing up both sword and arm. 3 times Sam struck with all his force, and at last one single cord of all the countless cords snapped and twisted, curling and whipping through the air. One end of it lashed Sam's hand, and he cried out in pain, starting back and drawing his hand across his mouth. "It will take days to clear the road like this," he said. "What's to be done? Have those eyes come back?" "No, not to be seen," said Frodo, "but I still feel that they are looking at me, or thinking about me, making some other plan, perhaps. If this light were lowered, or if it failed, they would quickly come again." "Trapped in the end," said Sam bitterly, his anger rising again above weariness and despair. "Gnats in the net. May the curse of Faramir bite that Gollum, and bite him quick." "That would not help us now," said Frodo. "Come, let us see what Sting can do. It is an elven blade. There were webs of horror in the dark ravines of Beleriand, where it was forged. But you must be the guard and hold back the eyes. Here, take the star glass. Do not be afraid. Hold it up and watch." Then Frodo stepped up to the great grey net and hewed it with a wide sweeping stroke, drawing the bitter edge swiftly across the ladder of close-strung cords, and at once springing away, the blue gleaming blade shore through them like a scythe through grass. And they leaped and writhed and then hung loose. A great rent was made. Stroke after stroke he dealt, until at last all the web within his reach was shattered, and the upper portion blew and swayed like a loose veil in the incoming wind. The trap was broken. "Come," cried Frodo. "On, on!" Wild joy at their escape from the very mouth of despair suddenly filled all his mind. His head whirled as with a draught of potent wine. He sprang out, shouting as he came. It seemed light in that dark land to his eyes that had passed through the den of night. The great smokes had risen and grown thinner, and the last hours of somber day were passing. The red glare of Mordor had died away in solemn gloom. Yet it seemed to Frodo that he looked upon a morning of sudden hope. Almost he had reached the summit of the wall, only a little higher now. The cleft, Cirith Ungol, was before him, a dim notch in the black ridge, and the horns of rock darkling in the sky on either side. A short race, a sprinter's course, and he would be through. "The pass, Sam," he cried, not heeding the shrillness of his voice, that released from the choking airs of the tunnel rang out now high and wild. "The pass! Run, run, and we'll be through before anyone can stop us." Sam came up behind as fast as he could urge his legs, but glad as he was to be free, he was uneasy, and as he ran, he kept on glancing back at the dark arch of the tunnel, fearing to see eyes, or some shape beyond his imagining, springing off in pursuit. Too little did he or his master know of the craft of Shelob. She had many exits from her lair. Their age long she had dwelt. An evil thing in spider form, even such as once of old had lived in the land of the elves in the west, that is now under the sea, such as Beren, fought up in the mountains of Terror and Doriath, and so came to Luthien upon the green sword amid the hemlocks in the moonlight long ago. How Shelob came there, flying from ruin, no tale tells. For out of the dark years few tales have come, but still she was there. Who was there before Sauron? And before the first stone of Barad-dûr, she served none but herself, drinking the blood of elves and men, bloated and grown fat with endless brooding on her feast, weaving webs of shadow, for all living things were her food, and her vomit darkness. Far and wide her lesser broods, bastards of the miserable mates. Her own offspring, that she slew, spread from glen to glen, from the Ephel Duath to the eastern hills, to Dol Guldur and the fastness of Mirkwood. But none could rival her, Shelob the Great, the last child of Ungoliant, to trouble the unhappy world. Already, years before, Gollum had beheld her, Smeagol, who pried into all dark holes, and in past days he had bowed and worshipped her, and the darkness of her evil will walked through all the ways of his weariness beside him, cutting him off from light and from regret. And he had promised to bring her food, but her lust was not his lust. Little she knew of or cared for towers, or rings, or anything devised by mind or hand, who only desired death for all others, mind and body, and for herself a glut of life, alone, swollen till the mountains could no longer hold her up, and the darkness could not contain her. But that desire was yet far away, and long now she had been hungry, lurking in her den, while the power of Sauron grew, and light and living things forsook his borders, and the city in the valley was dead, and no elf or man came near, only the unhappy orcs, poor of food and weary, but she must eat. And however busily they delved new winding passages from the past and from their tower, ever she found some way to snare them. But she lusted for sweeter meat, and Gollum had brought it to her. We'll see, he said to... Hold on. We'll see, he said often to himself when the evil mood was on him, as he walked the dangerous road from Evanwheel to Morgul Vale. We'll see. It may well be. Oh yes, it will be. And when she throws away the bones and the empty garments, we shall find it, we shall get it, the precious, a reward for poor Smeagol, who brings nice food, and we'll save the precious, as we promised. Oh yes, and when we've got it safe, then she'll know it. Oh yes, and we'll pay her back, my precious. Then we'll pay everyone back. So he thought in an inner chamber of his cunning, which he still hoped to hide from her, even when he had come to her again, and had bowed low before her while his companion slept. And as for Sauron, he knew where she lurked. It pleased him that she would dwell there hungry, but unabated in malice, a more sure watch upon the ancient path into his land than any other that his skill could have devised. And orcs, they were useful slaves, but he had them in plenty. If now and again Shelob caught them to stay her appetite, she was welcome. He could spare them. And sometimes as man may cast a dainty to his cats he calls her, but she owns him not. Sauron would send her prisoners that he had no better use for. He would have them driven to her hole and report brought back to him of the play she made. As they both lived, delighting in their own devices, and feared no assaults, nor wrath, nor any end of their wickedness, Never yet had any fly escape from Shelob's webs, and the greater now was her rage and hunger. But nothing of this evil which they had stirred up against him did poor Sam know, except that a fear was growing on him, a menace which he could not see, and such a weight did it become that it was burdened to him to run, and his feet seemed laden. Dread was round him, and enemies before him in his path, and his master was in a fey mood, running heedlessly to meet them. Turning his eyes away from the shadow behind and the deep gloom beneath the cliff beyond, upon his left, he looked ahead and he saw two things that increased his dismay. He saw that the sword which Frodo still held unsheathed was glittering with blue flame, and he saw that through the sky behind was now dark, till the window in the tower was glowing red. Orcs, he muttered. We'll never rush it like this. There's orcs about and worse than orcs. Then returning quickly to his long habit of secrecy, he closed his hand about the precious vial, which he still bore. Red with his own living blood, his hand shone for a moment, and then he thrust the revealing light deep into a pocket near his breast, and drew his elven cloak about him. Now he tried to quicken his pace. His master was gaining on him. Already he was about 20 strides ahead, flitting on like a shadow. Soon he would be lost to sight in that gray world. Hardly had Sam hidden the light of the star glass when she came. A little way ahead, and to his left, he saw suddenly issuing from a black hole of shadow under the cliff, the most loathly shape that he had ever beheld, horrible beyond the horror of an evil dream. Most like a spider she was, but huger than the great hunting beasts, and more terrible than they because of the evil purpose in her remorseless eyes. Those same eyes that he had thought of daunted and defeated, there they were lit with the fell light again, clustering in her own thrust head. Great horns she had, and behind her short stalk-like neck was her huge swollen body, a vast bloated bag, swaying and sagging between her legs. Its great bulk was black, blotched with livid marks, but the belly underneath was pale and luminous, and gave forth a stench. Her legs were bent, with the great knobbed joints high above her back, and the hairs that stuck out like steel spines, and at each leg's end there was a claw. As soon as she had squeezed her soft, squelching body and its folded limbs out of the upper exit from her lair, she moved with a horrible speed, now running on her creaking legs, now making a sudden bound. She was between Sam and his master. Either she did not see Sam, or she avoided him for the moment as the bearer of the light, and fixed all her intent upon one prey, upon Frodo, bereft of his light, and fixed all her intent upon one prey, upon Frodo. Running heedlessly up the and fixed all her intent upon one prey, upon Frodo, bereft of his file, running heedless up the path, unaware of yet of his peril. Swiftly he ran, but Shelob was swifter, in few leaps she would have him. Sam gasped and gathered all his remaining breath to shout. "Look out behind!" he yelled. "Look out, master! But suddenly his cry was stifled. A long, clammy hand went over his mouth, and another caught him by the neck, while something wrapped itself about his leg. Taken off his guard, he toppled backwards into the arms of his attacker. "Got him!" hissed Gollum in his ear. "At last, my precious, we've got him. Yes, the nasty hobbit who takes this one. She'll get the other. Oh, yes, Shelob will get him. And not Smeagol, he promised. He won't hurt Master at all, but he's got you, you nasty, filthy little sneak." He spat on Sam's neck. Fury at the treachery and desperation at the delay when his master was in deadly peril gave to Sam a sudden violence and strength that was far beyond anything that Gollum had expected from the slow, stupid hobbit as he thought of him. Not Gollum himself could have twisted more quickly or more fiercely. His hold on Sam's mouth slipped, and Sam ducked and lunged forward again, trying to tear away from the grip on his neck. His sword was still in his hand, and on his left arm, hanging by its thong, was Faramir's staff. Desperately, he tried to turn and stab his enemy, but Gollum was too quick. His long right arm shot out and grabbed Sam's wrist. His fingers were like a vice. Slowly and relentlessly, he bent the hand down and forward, till with a cry of pain, Sam released the sword, and it fell to the ground. And all the while, Gollum's other hand was tightening on Sam's throat. Then Sam played his last trick. With all his strength, he pulled away and got to his feet, firmly planted. Then suddenly he drove his legs against the ground, and with all his whole force hurled himself backwards. Not expecting even this simple trick from Sam, Gollum fell over with Sam on top, and he received the weight of the sturdy hobbit in his stomach. A sharp hiss came out of him, and for a second his hand upon Sam's throat loosened, but his fingers still gripped the sword hand. Sam tore himself forward and away, and stood up, and then quickly he wheeled away to his right, pivoted on the wrist held by Gollum. Laying hold of the staff with his left hand, Sam swung it up, and down it came with a whistling crack on Gollum's outstretched arm just below the elbow. With a squeal, Gollum let go. Then Sam waded in, Not waiting to change the staff from left to right, he dealt another savage blow. Quick as a snake, Gollum slithered aside, and the stroke aimed at his head fell across his back. The staff cracked and broke. That was enough for him. Grabbing from behind was an old game of his, and seldom had he failed in it. But this time, misled by spite, he had made the mistake of speaking and gloating before he had both hands on his victim's neck. Everything had gone wrong with his beautiful plan, since that horrible light had so unexpectedly appeared in the darkness. And now he was face to face with a furious enemy, little less than his own size. This fight was not for him. Sam swept up his sword from the ground and raised it. Gollum squealed and springing aside on all fours, he jumped away in one big bound like a frog. Before Sam could reach him, he was off, running with amazing speed back towards the tunnel. Sword in hand, Sam went after him. For the moment, he had forgotten everything else, but the red fury in his brain and the desire to kill Gollum. Before he could overtake him, Gollum was gone. Then as the dark hole stood before him and the stench came out to meet him, like a clap of thunder, the thought of Frodo and the monster smote upon Sam's mind. He spun around and rushed wildly up the path, calling and calling his master's name. He was too late. So far, Gollum's plot had succeeded. I'm going to take a little break to take a drink, and then we'll read Chapter 10. The Choices of Master Samwise. Yeah, so basically, like, if you watch the movies, you can see how, like, some elements of the Two Towers are seen in the end of Fellowship of the Ring, or partly, particularly the end of Fellowship of the Ring, namely, Boromir's death and so forth. Yeah, if you remember the movies correctly, they had Frodo abandon Sam, thinking that Sam had finished the Elvish way bread, the whole trickery of Gollum. That never happened. That never happened. Sam was there. Alright? But now, like I said, for those who are, just tuning in, Samwise actually means half-wise. Which is kind of ironic, given Sam's character, basically. Basically, half-wise, half-wit. Sam's not the smartest, necessarily, of hobbits, but if you think about it, he's the real hero of the story. So it's kind of ironic that his name means half-wit. But now we're on Chapter 10, where we find he has, the choices he has to make. So the choices of Master Samwise. Let me pick something. Alright, ready, chat? Frodo was lying face upward on the ground, and the monster was bending over him, so intent upon her victim that she took no heed of Sam and his cries until he was close at hand. As he rushed up, he saw that Frodo was already bound in cords, wound about him from ankle to shoulder, and the monster with her great forelegs was beginning to have to drag his body away. On the near side of him lay, gleaming on the ground, his elven blade, where it had fallen useless from his grasp. Sam did not wait to wonder what was to be done, or whether he was brave or loyal or filled with rage. He sprang forward with a yell and seized his master's sword in his left hand. Then he charged. No onslaught more fierce was ever seen in the savage world of beasts, where some desperate small creature armed with little teeth alone will spring upon a tower of horn and hide that stands above its fallen mate. Disturbed as if out of some gloating dream by his small yell, she turned slowly, the dreadful malice of her glance upon him. But almost before she was aware that a fury was upon her greater than any she had known in countless years, the shining sword bit upon her foot and shore away the claw. Sam sprang in, and inside the arches of her legs, and with a quick upthrust of his own other hand, stabbed at the clustered eyes upon her lowered head. One great eye went dark. Now the miserable creature was right under her, for the moment out of the reach of her sting and of her claws. Her vast belly was above him with its putrid light, and the stench of it almost smote him down. Still his fury held for one more blow, and before she could sink upon him, smothering him, and with all his little impudence of courage, he slashed the bright elven blade across her with desperate strength. But Shelob was not as dragons are. No softer spot had she, save only her eyes. Knobbed and pitted with corruption was her age-old hide, but ever thickened from within with layer on layer of evil growth. The blade scored it with dreadful gash, but those hideous folds could not be pierced by any strength of men, not though elf or dwarf should force a seal or the hand of baron or of Turin wield it. She yielded to the stroke and then heaved up the great bag of her belly high above Sam's head. Poison frothed and bubbled from the wound. Now, splaying her legs, she drove her huge bulk down on him again. Too soon, for Sam still stood upon his feet, and dropping his own sword with both hands, he held the elven blade pointed upwards, fending off that ghastly roof. And so Shelob, with the driving force of her own cruel will, with strength greater than any warrior's hand, thrust herself upon a bitter spike. Deep it pricked, as Sam was crushed slowly to the ground. No such anguish had Shelob ever known, or dreamed of knowing, in all her long world of wickedness. Not the doughtiest soldier of all Gondor, nor the most savage orc entrapped in, had ever thus endured her, or set blade to her beloved flesh. A shudder went through her. Heaving up again, wrenching away from the pain, she bent her writhing limbs beneath her and sprang backwards in a convulsive leap. Sam had fallen to his knees by Frodo's head, his senses reeling in the foul stench, his two hands still gripping the hilt of the sword. Through the mist before his eyes, he was aware dimly of Frodo's face, and stubbornly he fought to master himself and to drag himself out of the swoon that was upon him. Slowly he raised his head and saw her, only a few paces away, eyeing him, her beak drabbling a spittle of venom and a green ooze trickling from below her wounded eye. There she crouched, her shuddering belly splayed upon the ground, the great bows of her leg quivering, and she gathered herself for another spring, this time to crush and sting to death. No little bite of poison to still the struggling of her meat, this time to slay and then to rend. Even as Sam himself crouched, looking at her, seeing his death in her eyes, the thought came to him, as if some remote voice had spoken, and he fumbled in his breast with his left hand, and found what he sought. Cold and hard and solid it seemed to his touch in a phantom world of horror, the phial of Galadriel. Galadriel, he said faintly, and then he heard voices far off but clear, the crying of the elves as they walked under the stars in the beloved shadows of the Shire, and the music of the elves as it came through his sleep in the Hall of Fire in the House of Elrond. Gelthanil Albereth. And then his tongue was loosed, and his voice cried in a language which he did not know. Albereth Gelthanil, Omenel Palandaril, the Nalan se Dinguruthos, a Tironin, Fenuilas. And with that he staggered to his feet, and was Samwise the Hobbit, Hamfast's son again. Now come, you filth, he cried, you've hurt my master, you brute, and you'll pay for it. We're going on, but we'll settle with you first. Come on, and taste it again. As if his indomitable spirit had its potency in motion, the glass blazed suddenly like a white torch in his hand. It flamed like a star that, leaping from the firmament, sears the dark air with intolerable light. No such terror out of heaven had ever burned in Shelob's face before. The beams of it entered into her wounded hand and scored her with unbearable pain, and a dreadful infection of light spread from eye to eye. She fell back, beating the air with her forelegs, her sight blasted by inner lightnings, her mind in agony. Then turning her maimed head away, she rolled aside and began to crawl, claw by claw, towards the opening in the dark cliff behind. Sam came on. He was reeling like a drunken man, but he came on, and Shelob, cowed at last, shrunken in defeat, jerked and quivered as she tried to hasten from him. She reached the hole, and squeezing down, leaving a trail of green-yellow slime, she slipped in. Even as Sam hewed a last stroke at her dragging legs, then he fell to the ground. Shelob was gone, and whether she lay long in her lair nursing her malice and misery, and in slow years of darkness healed herself from within, rebuilding her clustered eyes until with hunger like death she spun once more her dreadful snares in the glens of the mountains of shadow, this tale does not tell. Sam was left alone. Wearily, as the evening of the nameless land fell upon the place of battle, he crawled back to his master. Master, dear master, he said, but Frodo did not speak. As he had run forward, eager, rejoicing to be free, Shelob with hideous speed had come behind him with a one swift stroke had stung him in the neck. He lay now, pale, and heard no voice, and did not move. Master, dear master, said Sam, and through a long silence waited, listening in vain. Then as quickly as he could, he cut away the binding cords and laid his head upon Frodo's breast and to his mouth, but no stir of life could he find, nor feel the faintest flutter of the heart. Often he chafed his master's hand and feet, and touched his brow, but all were cold. Frodo, Mr. Frodo, he called, don't leave me here alone. It's your Sam calling. Don't go where I can't follow. Wake up, Mr. Frodo. Oh, wake up, Frodo, my dear. Me dear, wake up. Then anger surged over him, and he ran about his master's body in a rage, stabbing the air and smiting the stones and shouting challenges. Presently he came back, and bending looked at Frodo's face, pale beneath him in the dusk. And suddenly he saw, but he was in the picture that was revealed to him in the mirror of Galadriel and Lorien. Frodo with a pale face, lying fast asleep under a great dark cliff. Or fast asleep, he had thought then. He's dead, he said. Not asleep, dead. And as he said it, as if the words had set the venom to its work again, it seemed to him that the hue of the face grew livid green. And then black despair came down on him, and Sam bowed to the ground and drew his great hood over his head, and night came into his heart, and he knew no more. When at last the blackness passed, Sam looked up and the shadows were about him, but for how many minutes or hours the world had gone dragging on he could not tell. He was still in the same place, and still his master lay beside him dead. The mountains had not crumbled, nor the earth fallen into ruin. "What shall I do? What shall I do?" he said. "Did I come all this way with him for nothing?" And then he remembered his own voice speaking words that at the time he did not understand himself, at the beginning of their journey. "I have something to do before the end. I must see through, sir, if you understand." "But what can I do? Not leave Mr. Frodo dead and unburied on the top of the mountains and go home, or go on?" "Go on," he repeated, and for a moment doubt and fear shook him. "Go on? Is that what I've got to do? And leave him?" Then at last he began to weep, and going to Frodo he composed his body and folded his cold hands upon his breast, and wrapped his cloak about him. And he laid his own sword at one side, and the staff that Faramir had given at the other. "If I'm to go on," he said, "then I must take your sword, by your leave, Mr. Frodo. But I'll put this one to lie by you, as it lay by the old king in the barrow. You've got your beautiful mithril coat from old Mr. Bilbo, and your star glass. And Mr. Frodo, you did lend it to me, and I'll need it, for I'll always be in the dark now. It's too good for me. And the lady gave it to you, but maybe you should understand. Do you understand, Mr. Frodo? I've got to go on." Again, welcome everyone. But he could not go on, not yet. He knelt and held Frodo's hand and could not release it. And time went by, and still he knelt, holding his master's hand, and in his heart kept keeping a debate. Now he tried to find strength to tear himself away and go on a lonely journey, for vengeance. If once he could go, his anger would bear him down all the roads of the world, pursuing till he had him at last. Gollum. And Gollum would die in a corner. But that was not what he had set out to do. It would not be worthwhile to leave his master for that. It would not bring him back. Nothing would. They had better both be dead together, and that, too, would be a lonely journey. He looked on the bright point of the sword. He thought of the places behind where there was a black brink and an empty fall into nothingness. There was no escape that way. That was to do nothing, not even to grieve. That was not what he had set out to do. What am I to do then? He cried again, and now he seemed plainly to know the hard answer. See it through. Another lonely journey, and the worst. What? Me alone go to crack of doom and all? He quailed still, but the resolve grew. What? Me take the ring from him? The council gave it to him. But the answer came at once, and the council gave him companion so that the errand should not fail. And you are the last of all the company. The errand must not fail. I wish I wasn't the last, he groaned. I wish old Gandalf was here, or somebody. Why am I left all alone to make up my mind? I'm sure to go wrong, and it's not for me to go taking the ring, putting myself forward. But you haven't put yourself forward. You've put forward. And as for not being the right and proper person, why, Mr. Frodo wasn't, as you might say, nor Mr. Bilbo. They didn't choose themselves. Well, I must make up my own mind. I will make it up. But I'll be sure to go wrong. That'd be Sam Gamgee all over. Let me see now. If we're found here, or Mr. Frodo's found, and the thing's on him, well, the enemy will get it. And that's the end of all of us, of Lorien and Rivendell and the Shire and all. And there's no time to lose. Or it'll be the end anyway. The war has begun. More than likely, things are all going the enemy's way already. No chance to go back with it and get advice or permission. No, it's sit here till they come and kill me over Master's body and gets it. Or take it and go. He drew a deep breath. Then take it. It is. He stooped. Very gently he undid the clasp at the neck and slipped his hand inside Frodo's tunic. Then with his other hand, raising the head, he kissed the cold forehead and softly drew the chain over it. And then the head lay quietly back again in rest. No change came over the still face. And by that more than by all other tokens, Sam was convinced at last that Frodo had died and laid aside the quest. Goodbye, Master, my dear, he murmured. Forgive your Sam. He'll come back to this spot when the job's done, if he manages it, and then he'll not leave you again. Rest you quiet till I come, and may no foul creature come nigh you. And if the lady could hear me, and give me one wish, I would wish to come back and find you again. Goodbye. And then he bent his own neck and put the chain upon it, and at once his head was bowed to the ground with the weight of the ring, as if a great stone had been strung on him. But slowly, as if the weight became less, or new strength grew in him, he raised his head, and then with a great effort got to his seat, and found that he could walk and bear this burden. And for a moment he lifted up the phial, and looked down at his master, and the light and the light burned gently now with the soft radiance of the evening star in the summer. And in that light Frodo's face was fair of hue again, pale but beautiful, with an elvish beauty, as of one who had long passed the shadows. But with the bitter comfort of that last sight, Sam turned and hid the light and stumbled on into the growing dark. Sorry. He had not far to go. The tunnel was some way behind, the cleft a couple of 100 yards ahead or less. The path was visible in the dusk, a deep rut worn in ages of passage, running now gently up in a long trough with cliffs on either side. The trough narrowed rapidly. Soon Sam came to a long flight of broad, shallow steps. Now the Orc Tower was right above him, frowning black, and in it the red eye glowed. Now he was hidden in the dark shadow under it. He was coming to the top of the steps and was in the cleft at last. "I've made up my mind," he kept saying to himself, but he had not. Though he had done his best to think it out, what he was doing was altogether against the grain of his nature. "Have I got it wrong?" he muttered. What ought I to have done? As the sheer sides of the cleft closed about him, before he reached the actual summit, before he looked at last on the path ascending into the nameless land, he turned. For a moment motionless in intolerable doubt, he looked back. He could still see, like a small blot in the gathering gloom, the mouth of the tunnel, and he thought he could see or guess where Frodo lay. He fancied there was a glimmer on the ground down there, or perhaps it was some trick of his tears, as he peered out on that high stony place where all his life had fallen in ruin. "If only I could have my wish, my one wish," he sighed, "to go back and find him." Then at last he turned to the road in front and took a few steps, the heaviest and the most reluctant he had ever taken. Only a few steps, and now only a few more, and he would be going down, and would never see that high place again. And then suddenly he heard cries and voices. He stood still as stone. Orc voices. They were behind him and before him. A noise of tramping feet and harsh shouts. Orcs were coming up the cleft from far side, from some entry to the tower, perhaps. Tramping feet and shouts behind. He wheeled around. He saw small red lights, torches, winking way below there as they issued from the tunnel. At last the hunt was up. The red eye of the tower had not been blind. He was caught. Now the flicker of approaching torches and the clink of steel ahead was very near. In a minute they would reach the top and be on him. He had taken too long in making up his mind, and now it was no good. How could he escape or save himself or save the ring? The ring! He was not aware of any thought or decision. He simply found himself drawing out the chain, taking the ring in his hand. The head of the Orc Company appeared in the cleft right before him. Then he put it on. The world changed, and a single moment of time was filled with an hour of thought. At once he was aware that hearing was sharpened while sight was dimmed, but otherwise then in Shelob's lair. All things about him now were not dark but vague, while he himself was there in a great hazy world alone, like a small black solid rock, and the ring, weighing down his left hand, like an orb of hot gold. He did not feel invisible at all, but horribly and uniquely visible, and he knew that somewhere an eye was searching for him. He heard the crack of stone and the murmur of water far off in Morgul Vale, and down away under the rock the bubbling misery of Shelob, groping, lost in some blind passage, and voices in the dungeons of the tower, and the cries of the orcs as they came out of the tunnel, and deafening roaring in his ears, the crashing of the feet, and rending of clamor of the orcs before him. He shrank against the cliff, but they marched up like phantom company, gray distorted figures in the mist, only dreams of fear and with pale flames in their hands. And they passed him by. He cowered, trying to creep away into some cranny to hide. He listened. The orcs from the tunnel and the others marching down had sighted one another, and both parties were now hurrying and shouting. He heard them both clearly, and he understood what they said. Perhaps the ring gave understanding of tongues. Or simply understanding, especially of the servants of Sauron, its maker, so that if he gave heed, he understood and translated the thought to himself. Certainly the ring had grown greatly in power as it approached the places of its forging, but in one thing it did not confer, and that was courage. At present, Sam still thought only of hiding, of lying low till all was quiet again, and he listened anxiously. He could not tell how near the voices were. The words seemed almost in his ears. "Ola! Gorbog, what are you doing up there? Had enough of war already? Orders, you lubber! And what are you doing, Shagrat? Tired of lurking up there? Thinking of coming down to fight? Orders to you. I'm in command of this pass, so speak civil. What's your report? Nothing. Hi, yo! A yell broke into the exchange with the leaders. The orcs lowered down had suddenly seen something. They began to run, so did the others. Hi, Ola! Here's something lying right in the road! A spy, a spy! There was a hoot of snarling horns and a babble of baying voices. With a dreadful stroke, Sam was wakened from his cowering mood. They had seen his master. What would they do? He had heard tales of the orcs to make the blood run cold. It could not be borne. He sprang up. He flung the quest and all his decisions away, and fear and doubt with him. He knew now where his place was and had been, at his master's side. Though what he could do there was not clear. Back he ran down the steps, down the path towards Frodo. How many are there, he thought, 30 or 40 from the tower at least? And a lot more than that from down below, I guess. How many can I kill before they get me? They'll see the flame of the sword as soon as I draw it. And they'll get me sooner or later. I wonder if any song will ever mention it. How Samwise fell in the high pass and made a wall of bodies around his master. No song. Of course not, for the ring will be found, and there'll be no more songs. Sorry. I can't help it. My place is by Mr. Frodo. They must understand that. Elrond and the council and the great lords and ladies with all their wisdom. Their plans have gone wrong. I can't be their ring bearer, not without Mr. Frodo. But the orcs were out of his dim sight now. He had no time to consider himself, but now he realized that he was weary. Weary almost to exhaustion. His legs would not carry him as he wished. He was too slow. The path seemed miles long. Where had they all got to in the mist? There they were again, a good way ahead still. A cluster of figures around something lying on the ground. A few seemed to be darting this way and that, bent like dogs on a trail. He tried to make a spurt. Come on, Sam, he said, or you'll be too late again. He loosened the sword in its sheath. In a minute he would draw it, and then there was a wild clamor, hooting and laughing as if something was lifting off the ground. Oi, oi, up! Then a voice shouted, now off, the quick way, back to the Undergate. She'll not trouble us tonight by all the signs. The whole band of orc figures began to move. 4 in the middle were carrying a body high on their shoulders. Yahoy! They had taken Frodo's body. They were off. He could not catch them up. Still he labored on. The orcs reached the tunnel and were passing in. Those with the burden went first, and behind them there was a great deal of struggling and jostling. Sam came on. He drew the sword, a flicker of blue in his wavering hand, but they did not see it. Even as they came panting up, the last of them vanished into the black hole. For a moment he stood gasping, clutching his breast. Then he drew his sleeve across his face, wiping away the grime and sweat and tears. Curse the filth, he said, and sprang after them into the darkness. It no longer seemed very dark to him in the tunnel. Rather, it was as if he had stepped out of a thin mist into a heavier fog. His weariness was growing, but his will hardened all the more. He thought he could see the light of torches a little way ahead, but try as he would, he could not catch them up. Orcs go fast in tunnels, and this tunnel they knew well, for in spite of Shelob, they were forced to use it often as the swiftest way from the dead city over the mountains. And what far-off time the main tunnel in the great round pit had been made, where Shelob had taken up her abode, and ages past, they did not know. But many byways they had themselves delved about it on either side, so as to escape the laird and their goings, to and fro in the business of their masters. Tonight they did not intend to go far down, but were hastening to find a side passage that led back to their watchtower on the cliff. Most of them were gleeful, delighted with what they had found and seen, and as they ran they grabbed and yammered, after the fashion of their kind. Sam heard the noise of their harsh voices, flat and hard in the dead air, and he could distinguish 2 voices from among all the rest. They were louder and nearer to him. The captains of the 2 parties seemed to be bringing up the rear, debating as they went. Can't you stop your rabble making such a racket, Shagrat? Grunted the one. We don't want Shelob on us. Go on, Gorbag. Yours are making more than half the noise, said the other. But let the lads play. No need to worry about Shelob for the bit, I reckon. She sat on a nail, it seems, and we shan't cry about that. Didn't you see? A nasty mess all the way back to that cursed crack of hers. If we've stopped it at once, and we've stopped it 100 times, so let 'em laugh. Now we've struck a bit of luck at last. Got something that Lugbergs wants. Lugbergs wants it, eh? What is it, do you think? Elvish it looked to me, but undersized. What's the danger in a thing like that? Don't know till we've had a look. Oh ho, so that they haven't told you what to expect. They don't tell us all they know, do they? Not by half. But they can make mistakes. Even the top ones can. Shh, Gorbag. Shagrat's voice was lowered so that even with his strangely sharpened hearing, Sam could only just catch what was said. They may, but they've got eyes and ears everywhere, some among my lots, as like as not. But there's no doubt about it. They're troubled about something. The Nazgul down below are, by your account, and Lugburst is too. Something nearly slipped. Nearly, you say, said Gorbag. All right, said Shagrat, but we'll talk about that later. Wait till we get to the underway. There's a place where we can talk a bit, while the lads go on. Shortly afterwards, Sam saw the torches disappear. Then there was a rumbling noise, and just as he hurried up, a bump. As far as he could guess, the orcs had turned and gone into the very opening which Frodo and he had tried and found blocked. It was still blocked. There seemed to be a great stone in the way, but the orcs had got through somehow, for he could hear the voices on the other side. They were still running along, deeper and deeper into the mountain. Back towards the tower, Sam felt desperate. They were carrying off his master's body for some foul purpose, and he could not follow. He thrust and pushed on at the block, and he threw himself against it, but it did not yield. Then, not far inside, or so he thought, he heard the two captains' voices talking again. He stood still listening for a little, hoping perhaps to learn something useful. Perhaps Gorbag, who seemed to belong to Minas Morgul, would come out, and he could then slip in. No, I don't know, said Gorbag's voice. The messages go through quicker than anything could fly as a rule, but I don't inquire how it's done. Safest not to. Those Nazgul give me the creeps, and they skin the body off you as soon as they look at you, and leave you all cold in the dark on the other side. But he likes them. They're his favorites nowadays, so it's no use grumbling. I tell you, it's no game serving down in the city. You should try being up here with Shelob for company, said Shagrat. I'd like to try somewhere where there's none of them, but the war's on now, and when that's over, things may be easier. It's going well, they say. They would, grunted Gorbag. We'll see. But anyway, if it does go well, there should be a lot more room. What do you say? If we get a chance, you and me slip off and set up somewhere on our own with a few trusty lads? Somewhere where there's good loot nice and handy and no big bosses. Ah, said Shagrat, like old times. Yes, said Gorbag, but don't count on it. I'm not easy in my mind. As I said, the big bosses, His voice sank almost to whisper. Even the biggest can make mistakes. Something nearly slipped, you say. I say something has slipped, and we've got to look out. Always the poor orcs to put slips right in small things. But don't forget, the enemies don't love us any more than they love him. And if they get topsides on him, we're done too. But see here, when were you ordered out? About an hour ago, just before you saw us, a message came. Nazgul uneasy, spies feared on stairs, double vigilance, patrols ahead of the stairs. I came at once. Bad business, said Gorbag. See here, our silent watchers were uneasy more than 2 days ago, that I know. My patrol wasn't ordered out for another day, nor any message sent to Lugburst either, owing to the great signal going up and the high Nazgul going off to the war and all that. And then they couldn't get Lugburst to pay attention for a good while, I'm told. The eye was busy elsewhere, I suppose, said Shagrat. Big things going on way west, they say. I dare say, growled Gorbag, but in the meantime, enemies have got up the stairs. And what were you up to? You're supposed to keep watch, aren't you? Special orders or no? What are you for? That's enough. Don't try and teach me my job. We were awake all right. We knew there was funny things going on. Very funny. Yes, very funny. Lights and shouting and all. But Sheila was on the go. My lad saw her in her sneak. Her sneak? What's that? You must have seen him. Little thin black fellow, like a spider himself, or perhaps more like a starved frog. He's been here before. Came out of Lugburst the first time, years ago, and we had word from high up to let him pass. He's been up the stairs once or twice since then. We've left him alone. Seems to have some understanding with her ladyship. I suppose he's no good to eat. She wouldn't worry about words from high up, but a fine guard you keep in the valley. He was up here a day before all this racket. Early last night we saw him. Anyway, my lads reported that her ladyship was having some fun, and that seemed good enough for me until the message came. I thought her sneak had brought her a toy. Or that you had perhaps sent her a present, a prisoner of war or something. I don't interfere when she's playing. Nothing gets by Shelob when she's on the hunt. Nothing, say you. Didn't you ever use your eyes back there? I tell you, I'm not easy in my mind. Whatever came up the stairs did get by. It cut her web and got clean out of the hole. That's something to think about. Oh, well, but she got him in the end, didn't she? Got him? Got who? This little fellow? But if he was the only one, then she'd have had him off to her larder long before. And there he'd be now. And if Lugburst wanted him, You'd have to go and get him. Nice for you, but there was more than one. At this point, Sam began to listen more attentively and pressed his ear against the stones. Who'd cut the cords she put around him, Shagrat? Same as the cut of the web. Didn't you see that? And who stuck a pin into her ladyship? Same one, I reckon. And where is he? Where is he, Shagrat? Shagrat made no reply. You may well put your thinking cap on if you got one. It's no laughing matter. No one has ever stuck a pin in Shelob before, as you should know well enough. There's no grief in that, but think, there's someone loose hereabouts that's of more dangerous than any other damned rebel that ever walked since the bad old times, since the great siege. Something has slipped. And what is it then? Growled Shagrat. By all the signs, Captain Shagrat, I'd say there's a large warrior loose. Elf, most likely, with an elf sword anyway, and an axe as well, maybe. And he's loose in your bounds, too. And you've never spotted him. Very funny indeed. Gorbag spat. Sam smiled grimly at his description of himself. Oh, well, you always did take a gloomy view, said Shagrat. You can read the signs how you like, but there may be other ways to explain them. Anyhow, I've got watchers at every point, and I'm going to deal with one thing at a time. When I've had a look at the fellow we have caught, then I'll begin to worry about something else. It's my guess you won't find much in that little fellow, said Gorbag. He may have had nothing to do with the real mischief. The big fellow with the sharp sword doesn't seem to have thought him worth much anyhow. Just left him lying. Regular Elvis trick. We'll see. Come on now, we've talked enough. Let's go and have a look at the prisoner. What are you going to do with him? Don't forget I spotted him first. If there's any game, me and my lads must be in on it. Now, growled Shagrat, I have my orders, and it's more than my belly's worth, or yours, to break them. Any trespasser found by the guard is to be held at the tower. Prisoner is to be stripped. Full description of every article, garment, weapon, letter, ring, or trinket is to be sent to Lugbers at once, and to Lugbers only. And the prisoner is to be kept safe and intact, under pain of death for every member of the guard, until he sends or comes himself. That's plain enough, and that's what I'm going to do. Strip day, said Gorbag. What, teeth, nails, hair, and all? No, none of that. He's for Lugbers, I tell you. He's wanted safe and whole. You'll find that difficult, laughed Gorbag. He's nothing but carrion now. What Lugbers will do with such stuff, I can't guess. He might as well go in this pot. You fool, snarled Shagrat. You've been talking very clever, but there's a lot you don't know, though most other folk do. You'll be for the pot or for Shelob if you don't take care. Carrion? Is that all you know of her ladyship? When she binds the cord, she's after meat. She doesn't eat dead meat, nor suck cold blood. This fellow isn't dead. Sam reeled, clutching at the stone. He felt as if the whole dark world was turning upside down. So great was the shock that he almost swooned, but even as he fought to keep hold of his senses, deep inside him, he was aware of the comment. You fool, he isn't dead, and your heart knew it. Don't trust your head, Samwise, it's not the best part of you. The trouble with you is that you never really had any hope. Now what is to be done? For the moment, nothing but to prop himself against the unmoving stone and listen to the vile orc voices. Garn, said Shagrat. She's got more than one poison. When she's hunting, she just gives them a dab in the neck and then they go limp as boned fish, and then she has her way with them. You remember old Uftak? We lost him for days, and we found him in a corner hanging up he was. But he was wide awake and glaring. How we laughed. She'd forgotten him, maybe. But we didn't touch him. No good interfering with her. Nar, this little filth, he'll wake up in a few hours, and beyond feeling a bit sick for a bit, he'll be alright. Or would be if Lugbers would let him alone. And of course, beyond wondering where he is and what's happened to him. And what's going to happen to him, laughed Gorbag. We can tell him a few stories at any rate, if we can't do anything else. I don't suppose he's ever been in lovely Lugbers. So you may like to know what to expect. This is going to be more funny than I thought. Let's go. There's going to be no fun, I tell you, said Shagrat, and he's got to be kept safe, or we're all as good as dead. Alright, but if I were you, I'd catch the big one that's loose, before you send in any report to Lugbers. It won't sound too pretty to say you've caught the kitten and let the cat escape. The voices began to move away. Sam heard the sound of feet receding. He was recovering from his shock, and now a wild fury was on him. I got it all wrong, he cried. I knew I would. Now they've got him, the devils, the dolts. Never leave your master, never, never. That was my right rule, and I knew it in my heart. May I be forgiven. Now I've got to... now I've got to get back to him. Somehow. He drew his sword again and beat on the stone with the hilt, but it only gave a dull sound. The sword, however, blazed so brightly now that he could see dimly in its light. To his surprise, he noticed that the great block was shaped by like a heavy door, and was less than twice his own height. Above it was a dark blank space between the top and the lower arch of the opening. It was probably only meant to be a stop against the intrusion of Shelob, fastened on the inside with some latch or bolt beyond the reach of her cunning. With his remaining strength, Sam leaped and caught the top, scrambled up, and dropped, and then he ran madly, sword blazing in hand, round a bend and up a winding tunnel. Sorry. Allergies. The news that his master was still alive roused him to a last effort beyond the thought of weariness. He could not see anything ahead, for this new passage twisted and turned constantly, but he thought he was catching the two orcs up. Their voices were growing nearer again. Now they seemed quite close. That's what I'm going to do, said Shagrat in angry tones. Put him right up in the top chamber. What for? Growled Gorbag. Haven't you had any lockups down below? He's going out of harm's way, I tell you, answered Shagrat. See? He's precious. I don't trust all you, my lads, and none of yours. Nor you neither, when you're mad for fun. He's going where I want him and where you won't come, if you don't keep civil. Up to the top, I say. He'll be safe there. Will he? Said Sam. You're forgetting the great big elvish warrior that's loose. And with that he raced around the last corner, only to find that by some trick of the tunnel, or by the hearing which the ring had gave him, he had misjudged the distance. The two orc figures were still some way ahead. He could see them now, black and squat against the red glare. The passage ran straight at last, up an incline, and at the end, wide open, were great double doors, leading probably to deep chambers far below than the high horn of the tower. Already the orcs with their burden had passed inside. Gorbag and Shagrat were drawing near the gates. Sam heard a burst of hoarse singing, blaring of horns and banging of gongs, a hideous clamor. Gorbag and Shagrat were already on the threshold. Sam yelled and brandished Sting, but his little voice was drowned in the tumult. No one heeded him. The great doors slammed to. Boom! The bars of iron fell into place inside. Clang! The gate was shut. Sam hurled himself against the bolted brazen plates and fell senseless to the ground. He was out in the darkness. Frodo was alive, but taken by the enemy. And that's where you'd be left, chat, on a cliffhanger. For that ends the Two Towers. That ends the Two Towers. So a bit of a cliffhanger, ladies and gentlemen. Frodo is alive, but caught by the enemy. Sam is on his way or trying to rescue him. Gandalf is on his way to Minas Tirith along with Pippin. Merry is back in Rohan with Theoden, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and so forth. So, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So, cliffhanger. A little bit of a cliffhanger. This is why J.R.R. Tolkien is considered the father of modern fantasy. But anyway, chat. Again, despite that hiccup with my router, thank you all for hanging out with me. I normally do this on Thursdays, but I had to do it tonight because of a family thing I had to do yesterday. Anyway, probably no stream tomorrow. Might do a watch party because we're doing some work around the house coming up, and my days are going to be pretty busy moving forward. So I'm probably not going to feel like at least not streaming tomorrow. However, Talk Nerdy to Us will be on my channel tomorrow, not tomorrow, Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And then because of Clash in Paris the following week, and I believe, Trey, remind me that the 29th also is when Cowman asked for me to be on your review channel to talk about the Austin Butler movie coming up. What's it called again? I literally just saw a trailer for it. But that movie is coming out the weekend of the 27th. Caught Stealing. Thank you. Caught Stealing. I think that's the one that Cowman asked me to be on. So I remember it was the same night as Clash, or the same day as Clash in Paris. But what's going to happen is maybe D&D. I don't know that day. Definitely playing D&D this coming Sunday. But I don't know about D&D the following Sunday because of the stream. I'll be on with Cowman, Trey, and Mr. T. As well as needing to watch the movie because chances are I'm not going to be able to see it in theater, so I have to wait for a Jack Sparrow copy to find its way to me, basically. But I'll tell Steph and I'll remind her basically that I will be unavailable for Talk Nerdy on the 29th because of Cowman stream and then watching the replay of Clash in Paris because Clash in Paris begins at like what 1 or 1:30 p.m. Eastern because of the time difference. So I'll be watching a replay of that in the evening. So I will be unavailable Sunday for Talk Nerdy. Anyway, chat. Sorry for that hiccup earlier. Didn't expect the it wasn't exactly the router. It was the Ethernet cable. Because, like I said, I need to get another Ethernet cable, or another couple, basically. Just get a couple new ones. Because I've had these for as long as I can remember. So I'm gonna get a couple new ones. But I came back, as I said I would, to finish reading The Two Towers, which I did so. Again, no reading streams next week. I'm gonna give my voice a little bit of a break. And then September 2nd, which I believe is the first Tuesday in September, I will be returning for the reading streams, but I'll be reading The Hellbound Heart, written by Clive Barker, of which Hellraiser is an adaptation of. So, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, have a good rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world, and I will see you all next time. Peace.